You don't have friends because you've been collecting people who need you, not people who see you. You've been building a circle of comfort instead of a circle of truth. And deep down, you already know it. You feel it every time you celebrate alone. Every time your phone goes quiet. Every time you share good news and the response feels empty. You're surrounded by names in your contact list but starving for one real conversation. That's not loneliness. That's the pain of knowing you've been investing in the wrong soil. Here's what nobody tells you. Most of the people in your life aren't there because they value who you are. They're there because they need what you do. They need your energy. They need your availability. They need your yes. But the moment you stop performing, the moment you stop being useful, watch how fast the circle shrinks. You think it's loyalty, but it's transaction. You think it's friendship, but it's convenience. And you've been confused because you were taught that having many people around you means you're loved. No, it means you're accessible. There's a difference. Real friendship doesn't announce itself with noise. It doesn't need constant validation. It doesn't require you to shrink so someone else can shine. True friends don't just show up when you're celebrating. They show up when you're collapsing. They show up when you have nothing to offer. They show up when the crowd leaves and the lights go out. But most people don't have that. Most people have audiences pretending to be allies, witnesses pretending to be warriors, associates dressed up as family. And the tragedy is you've been calling it friendship because you were afraid to call it what it really is. Emptiness with company. You've spent years trying to belong to groups that were never designed for your destiny. You bent yourself to fit into circles that required you to edit your truth. You dimmed your lights so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable. You laughed at jokes that hurt you. You stayed silent when you should have spoken. You pretended you were fine when you were falling apart. All because you were terrified of being rejected. But here's the brutal reality. You were already rejected. You just didn't want to admit it. They kept you close enough to use you, but far enough to avoid seeing you. That's not friendship. That's exploitation wrapped in familiarity. Listen carefully. The reason you don't have true friends isn't because you're unworthy. It's because you've been seeking approval instead of alignment. You've been chasing connection instead of building capacity. You thought friendship was about being liked. No. Friendship is about being known. And you can't be known if you're always performing. You can't be known if you're hiding behind versions of yourself that you think people will accept. You can't be known if you're terrified that the real you will be too much or not enough. So you stay in the middle, safe, bland, likable, and completely alone. There's a seed that falls into the ground. It doesn't land in a garden surrounded by flowers. It lands in darkness, cold, isolated, buried beneath weight it didn't choose. And if that seed could speak, it would say the same thing you're saying. Where is everyone? Why am I alone? Why does it feel like I'm dying instead of growing? But here's what the seed doesn't understand yet. The isolation isn't punishment. It's preparation. The darkness isn't abandonment. It's activation. Everything that seed needs to become a tree is already inside it. But it will never discover that power surrounded by comfort. It has to break in the dark. It has to push through resistance. It has to grow in silence before it ever sees sunlight. You're that seed. And the reason your circle is shrinking isn't because you're losing people. It's because God is removing distractions. You think you're being abandoned. No. You're being refined. You think you're being isolated. No. You're being positioned. The people who left weren't supposed to stay. They were scaffolding, not structure. They were seasonal, not permanent. And you're in pain because you tried to make temporary people into forever promises. But your manufacturer knows better. He knows you can't build a future on a foundation of people who were only meant to teach you a lesson. You were designed by a creator who doesn't make mistakes. And just like a manufacturer knows every detail of what he builds, your creator knows every wire, every circuit, every purpose inside you. You don't go to a microwave and ask it why it's not a refrigerator. You don't go to a lion and ask it why it doesn't graze with sheep. You go to the one who made it. And yet you've been asking broken people to tell you who you are. You've been asking empty people to fill you. You've been asking lost people to give you direction. That's why you're confused. You've been seeking answers from people who don't even have the manual. True friendship is built in the furnace, not in the festival. It's forged under pressure, not in convenience. A real friend isn't someone who agrees with everything you say. A real friend is someone who loves you enough to tell you the truth, even when it costs them your comfort. A real friend doesn't just celebrate your wins. They confront your wounds. They challenge your excuses. They refuse to let you stay small. And most people can't handle that. Most people want cheerleaders, not companions. They want enablers, not equals. So they surround themselves with people who make them feel good instead of people who make them grow. But growth doesn't happen in comfort. Growth happens in the uncomfortable space between who you are and who you're becoming. And the people who are supposed to walk with you into that space won't look like the crowd. They won't sound like the crowd. They won't move like the crowd. Because the crowd is designed to keep you average. The crowd celebrates mediocrity. The crowd rewards sameness. And if you're called to something greater, the crowd will never understand you. They'll tolerate you as long as you stay on their level. But the moment you start rising, watch how fast they try to pull you back down. There's a lion cub that grows up in captivity. It's fed by humans. It's surrounded by people. It has comfort. It has safety. But it never learns to hunt. It never learns to roar. It never learns to lead. And one day that lion looks in the mirror and sees a house cat. Not because it was born weak, but because it was raised in the wrong environment, surrounded by the wrong voices, fed the wrong food. And now it doesn't even recognize its own power. That's what happens when you build your identity around people who can't see your destiny. You start believing their limitations are your reality. You start shrinking to fit their expectations. And before you know it, you've forgotten you were made to roar. You feel rejected because you've been trying to force relationships that were never meant to last. You've been holding on to people who already let you go. You've been pouring into wells that have no bottom. And every time you feel that emptiness, you think something is wrong with you. But nothing is wrong with you. You're just finally waking up to the truth. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone has earned the right to be in your inner circle. Not everyone is capable of walking where you're going. And that's okay. Because the people who are meant for you won't require you to beg for their presence. They won't make you question your worth. They won't need constant proof that you matter. Before I continue, answer one question honestly. If everyone you call a friend disappeared tomorrow, would your purpose still be intact? If all the applause stopped, would you still know who you are? Because if your identity is wrapped up in who's around you, you don't have friends. You have mirrors. And mirrors only reflect what you show them. They don't reveal who you really are. If you're still listening, something inside you is waking up. You're starting to realize that being alone isn't the curse you thought it was. It's the clarity you've been avoiding. There's a craftsman who takes a piece of metal. It's dull, rough, useless in its current state. So he places it in the fire. He heats it until it glows. He hammers it, he bends it, he sharpens it. And every strike looks like destruction. Every flame looks like punishment. But the craftsman isn't destroying the metal. He's revealing the blade. He's activating the purpose that was always inside it. And when he's done, that piece of metal isn't the same. It's sharper, stronger, ready. But it couldn't become a blade surrounded by other dull metal. It had to be isolated. It had to be heated. It had to endure the process alone. You're in the fire right now. And you think it's because something is wrong. But what if it's because something is right? What if the isolation you're feeling isn't rejection? What if it's redirection? What if God is removing people not because you don't deserve them, but because they don't deserve you? What if the emptiness you feel isn't a sign that you're lacking? What if it's a sign that you're being cleared out for something greater? Most people never reach their destiny because they're too afraid to let go of what's familiar. They stay in friendships that drain them because at least it's not lonely. They stay in circles that limit them because at least they belong. But you can't grow in a space that requires you to stay small. You can't rise in an environment that punishes your elevation. And you can't fulfill your purpose surrounded by people who are terrified of theirs. So God does you a favor. He clears the room. He removes the voices. He isolates you, not to hurt you, but to grow you. Isolation isn't your enemy. It's your academy. It's where you learn to hear your own voice. It's where you discover what you believe when no one is around to influence you. It's where you build strength that doesn't need an audience. It's where you stop performing and start becoming. And yes, it's painful. Yes, it's lonely. Yes, it feels like punishment. But every great tree grows in silence. Every diamond is formed under pressure. Every lion learns to hunt alone. And you're no different. You think you need more people. But what you really need is more clarity. You think you need validation. But what you really need is vision. You think you need someone to walk with you. But what you really need is the courage to walk even when no one is beside you. Because the truth is, the path you're on is so specific, so unique, so tailored to your purpose that most people won't understand it. They'll judge it. They'll question it. They'll tell you to come back to what's familiar. But you can't go back, not because you're too good for where you were, but because you've outgrown who you were. There's a forest that grows in silence. No one hears the roots digging deep. No one sees the branches reaching up. No one celebrates the slow, steady growth. But one day people walk into that forest and they're amazed. They see strength. They see beauty. They see life. And they never stop to ask how long it took. They never ask how many storms that forest survived. They never ask how many seasons it stood alone. They just see the result. And that's your story too. Right now you're growing in silence. Right now you're being built in the dark. Right now you're being shaped by pressure no one sees. But one day people will see the result and they'll never know the cost. Here's what separates people who reach their destiny from people who die with regret. It's not talent. It's not opportunity. It's not even hard work. It's the willingness to walk alone when everyone else needs a crowd. It's the courage to let go of good so you can reach for great. It's the strength to choose purpose over popularity, because good is the enemy of great. Comfortable is the enemy of called. And average is the enemy of anointed. You've been stuck in good long enough. You've been surrounded by people who are okay with average, but something inside you is screaming for more. And that scream isn't coming from ego. It's coming from destiny. You don't need permission to outgrow people. You don't need permission to choose yourself. You don't need permission to walk away from relationships that no longer serve your purpose. And yes, people will be offended. Yes, they'll call you prideful. Yes, they'll say you changed. Good. Let them say it. Because the version of you they're mourning was never the real you anyway. It was the version you created to keep them comfortable. It was the version that smiled when you were screaming inside. It was the version that said yes when everything in you was saying no. That version had to die. Not because it was bad, but because it was blocking your breakthrough. You grow in silence. You heal in silence. You rise in silence. And the people who are meant to be with you will find you in that silence. They won't need you to explain yourself. They won't need you to prove your worth. They won't need you to perform. Because real friendship isn't built on what you can do. It's built on who you are. And who you are is enough. Not because you're perfect, but because you're purposed. Stop chasing people who are running from themselves. Stop begging for space in rooms where your presence is tolerated but not celebrated. Stop shrinking so others can shine. You weren't made to be a background character in someone else's story. You were made to be the author of your own. And that requires you to pick up the pen. That requires you to take responsibility for your narrative. That requires you to stop waiting for someone to validate your journey and start walking it with confidence. The loneliest season of your life will also be the most important, because it's in that season that you discover you don't need people to complete you. You discover you don't need applause to keep going. You discover you don't need approval to be valuable. You discover that everything you've been searching for outside of you has been inside you all along. You just couldn't hear it because the noise was too loud. You couldn't see it because the crowd was too big. You couldn't feel it because you were too busy performing. But now the crowd is gone. Now the noise has stopped. Now you're alone with the truth. And the truth is this: you are not an accident. You are not a mistake. You are not too much or not enough. You were crafted with intention. You were designed with precision. You were built for a specific assignment that only you can fulfill. And the reason you've been so uncomfortable in every space you've tried to fit into is because those spaces were never yours. They were classrooms. They were lessons. They were preparing you for where you're actually going. Your real friends aren't the ones who were there when everything was easy. Your real friends are the ones who will be there when everything falls apart. They're the ones who will sit with you in silence and not need you to be okay. They're the ones who will tell you the truth even when it hurts. They're the ones who will push you toward your purpose even when it costs them your presence. Those people are rare. And if you don't have them yet, it's not because you're unworthy. It's because you're not ready. Because true friendship requires you to be whole enough to give without needing something in return. It requires you to be healed enough to celebrate someone else's success without feeling threatened. It requires you to be secure enough in your identity that you don't need their validation. So maybe the reason you don't have true friends yet is because God is still working on you. Maybe He's still removing the parts of you that attract the wrong people. Maybe He's still healing the wounds that make you settle for less. Maybe He's still building the version of you that's strong enough to walk with giants. And that process hurts. It's uncomfortable. It's isolating. But it's necessary. Because you can't carry your destiny into your future with people who are stuck in your past. Right now, you're being stripped of everything that doesn't serve your next level. You're losing people. You're losing comfort. You're losing the old version of yourself. and it feels like death. But it's not death, it's birth. You're not losing your life. You're losing the life that was keeping you from living. You're not losing your friends. You're losing the people who were blocking your destiny. And yes, it hurts, but pain is not punishment. Pain is preparation. And you're being prepared for something so much greater than where you've been. One day, you're going to look back on this season and you're going to understand why it had to happen this way. You're going to see why certain people had to leave. You're going to see why certain doors had to close. You're going to see why you had to walk through fire alone. And you're going to thank God that He loved you enough to clear the path. Because if He had let you stay comfortable, you would have died there. If He had let you keep those people, you would have never discovered who you really are. If He had let you avoid the pain, you would have missed the purpose. So stop fighting the process. Stop resisting the isolation. Stop trying to rebuild what God is tearing down. Because He's not removing people to hurt you. He's removing people to position you. He's not isolating you to punish you. He's isolating you to prepare you. He's not letting you fail. He's letting you fly. But you can't fly carrying the weight of people who were never meant to go where you're going. You have to let go. You have to trust the process. You have to believe that what's being removed is making space for what's being prepared. Your best friendships haven't happened yet. Your deepest connections are still ahead of you. The people who are going to walk with you into your destiny are being prepared right now, just like you are. They're going through their own fire. They're walking through their own wilderness. They're being stripped of their own distractions. And when the time is right, your paths will cross. And you won't have to explain yourself. You won't have to perform. You won't have to shrink. Because they'll see you, really see you. And they'll celebrate you, not because of what you can do for them, but because of who you are. Until then, walk alone. Walk with confidence. Walk with purpose. Because you were never meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out. You were never meant to follow the crowd. You were meant to lead the few. You were never meant to be understood by everyone. You were meant to be recognized by the right ones. And the right ones are coming. But first, you have to become the version of yourself that's ready to receive them. This is your season of becoming. This is your season of shedding. This is your season of silence. And it's not going to last forever. But while you're in it, don't waste it. Don't spend it chasing people who don't see your value. Don't spend it mourning relationships that were never meant to last. Don't spend it questioning whether you're enough. You are enough. You've always been enough. And the people who are supposed to be in your life will show up when you stop begging for their presence. If this message spoke to your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. And if you want more messages that grow your soul, subscribe, because your journey has just begun.